This is Cardinals Nest 2.0, where we interview either student athlete alumni or coach alumni from St. Mary's University. Today, we have a coach alumni, a very familiar face. We'll introduce Mike Lester in just a second. My name is Dean Beckman. I'm the faculty athletics representative for St. Mary's. My co-host on Cardinals Nest 2.0 is Donny Nadeau, the sports information director for the Cardinals. And Donny, we've got a good friend to both of us today, and certainly to St. Mary's University, Mike Lester, our volleyball coach for a long time.
Yeah, well, first off, before we get to Mike, you didn't get the memo. There was a dress code today, and I think that you missed out on the memo.
I did. I missed out on the hair memo. Sorry, I'll try to do better next time.
Yep, as you said, Dean, having Mike on, Mike Lester, volleyball coach here for 19 years, if I remember correctly. And Mike, it's great to see you again. And hopefully you'll be able to bring back some fond memories of your time here. And I guess first off, just welcome back to the Cardinals Nest. You're no stranger to it, just in a little different environment this time.
Yeah, thanks for the invite and thanks for having me on, you guys. It's a little bit different. I don't have the bright lights and the heat of the studio here, but it's great to be back on with you guys, and hopefully we can have a fun conversation.
Well, Mike, now you are the Director of Athletics for Rochester Community and Technical College. And so one of the purposes of this show is to kind of get people caught up to speed with what you're doing now. So just tell us a little bit about that before we revisit some of your days at St. Mary's.
Sure, that sounds great. Yeah, so I am in my 5th year already here at RCTC as a Director of Athletics and Student Life here at the college. The time goes super fast. It just feels like a week ago we were still playing a match, in the conference tournament. Haven't moved. We're still in the same house we were in when I worked at St. Mary's. So my commute has gotten significantly shorter here at RCTC. I can get to campus in about a minute and a half, and that's by bike, not a 40-minute drive each way. But we're in good shape right now. We're trying to get our athletic contest going here for the winter. We have our first home basketball game tomorrow night with our women. And then we get rolling with our men's teams and our wrestling team. So we're just trying to navigate things just like everybody else is. But, things have been good over the last 5 years. And miss St. Mary's a lot, miss the people. But, it's nice being here working in my home, in my home area.
Mike, talk a little bit from your position now as Director of Athletics, basically. What have been some of your challenges during this crazy past 12 months that we've had? What have been the biggest challenges? As you mentioned, you're going to start up here with a basketball game, but what have been some of the challenges that you've faced trying to navigate this crazy world we're living in right now?
Yeah, I think we face the same challenges that everybody does, but the things that jump out at us is everybody in this profession and the role that you all are in, that anybody in athletics is in, we're trying to do what's best for our students and trying to make sure that they have the best experience that they can. And frankly, that's been challenging. We have students that are here on campus, obviously to get their education, but one of the reasons they came here was to participate in their sport. And we really just haven't been able to provide that for them. So really trying to navigate that, give them access to facilities in a safe way, make sure they're still able to continue down the path that they're wanting to continue on. That really has been the biggest challenge for us. I mentioned earlier off the air, we've had 20 some plans in terms of return to play and return to practice and return to competition and all those things. And it seems like every single one of those at some point winds up in the trash. And at some point you uncurl the paper and say, oh, maybe this one will work again because some guidance has changed and things like that. We're very fortunate, just like you all are at St. Mary's right now. We have a great partnership with Hy-Vee, and we're able to test our student athletes, pretty regularly to make sure that they're safe and that we're able to continue to play.
Well, let's hit the Wayback Machine and bring you back to St. Mary's because
Sure.
it was a great run, Mike. And I can honestly say that I was here for every one of your years, and that includes
You were.
your years as an assistant coach. Talk a little bit about how you actually arrived at St. Mary's and began what really was an amazing run as our volleyball coach and a start of a great friendship with me.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you what, you want to talk about the crazy world we're in with COVID right now. Boy, my path to St. Mary's was a pretty crazy one as well. I played volleyball and all that in college at Graceland College, a small school, and my time there was during my time there, I started doing some volleyball camps, and I was a graduate assistant at the University of Nebraska Kearney when former head volleyball coach at St. Mary's, Jim Callender, who I had done a ton of camps with over the years, said, hey, are you interested in giving up that graduate assistantship for a full-time assistant coaching position? And that was in 1996.
Oh my gosh.
Which, boy, it seems like just yesterday, because I can remember sitting on the couch in the basement of the Toner Center, having a conversation with Don Olson and Linda Anderson about taking on that assistant coaching role. And so that's how I ended up at St. Mary's and worked with Jim for 2 years before Jim left. And then I was right back down on that same couch, which I think if you check is probably still in my former office. It moved from Don Olson's office up to my office. Sat on that couch with Don and Linda again, and they both said, you know what, we could do a full-time search, we could do a national search, but we think we have the right person here to step into the role. And for that, I was extremely thankful. And 20 years later, we had been to 2 national championship tournaments, and the rest is, like you say, a little bit of history. So
Yeah, don't forget the other parts though. 12 conference tournaments, conference title. I mean, you had a great run. You had over 300, and if I remember right, 357 wins. That's a lot of wins for any coach. And I think it's always hard to talk about yourself, but have you had a chance to look back? And I mean, you had a really, really successful career as our head coach. Have you ever had a chance to kind of look back and say, wow, we accomplished a lot of things?
yeah, and I think the word that you use right there is the key, and it's that we did accomplish a lot of things. I've always said it's far less about the coach, and it's far more about the players. And as I was sitting thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, I started writing down a list of players and people that I was like, oh, I want to talk about, but frankly, I don't want to leave anybody out, because we had so many good kids, so many good coaches, come through our program, and every single one of them bought into what we were trying to accomplish. And frankly, it was those people that established St. Mary's volleyball is what it was.
Mike, I'm curious, was there ever a year, and you don't even have to remember the specific year necessarily, but was there ever a time where a team just really surprised you? Maybe you weren't expecting all that much from them because they were young or whatever the reason might be, and they just sort of exceeded expectations. Because I always think in coaching, and I'm not a coach myself, but those are kind of the special moments, right? It's one thing to be predicted to do well and then do well,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to kind of have a team overachieve. Can you tell us about a time like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that there was that time, but I'll be honest, even in my early days at St. Mary's, I took over the program in 1998 as the head coach, and we had some young kids that very first year, that you were like, boy, give this a year or two, and I think there's going to be something pretty special there. So even though maybe, that year, well, actually, let me go up back or move forward 1 year to 1999. It was that same group of kids, and we were, I believe, just over 500 that year. But we played in about 10 or 12 5-game matches. And we won some of them, we lost some of them. But boy, when you look back on that season, that 1999 season, where you had so many really close contests, you were like, that's going to be really big for this team next year. And then that 2000 season was the year that we made our first trip to the NCAA tournament. And so I think that's more what you see, Dean, is you can see that progression, and you can see that development, and you can see that confidence building from 1 year to the next with that group of kids. And I tell you, that was a great group. I said I wasn't going to mention a lot of players, but you have Diane Wood and Amber Ritora, Amanda Edmond, Shelley Hake, all part of that group. So it was a pretty special group to kind of really set the stage for for what was really the next 15 to 20 years of St. Mary's volleyball started, right back then.
One of the things I've noticed, and I noticed it with your team, and it really has carried over since you left, and it's you always seem to have a great setter. And I know how important a setter is to volleyball. They do run the show, but you mentioned Amber, and I mean, in fear of forgetting people, but you've got Brittany Cherwinka, you've got Lexia Simos, you've got just it always seemed like you had a setter who was really, if nothing else, above like the median in the conference. And is that something that you really focused on as a coach, to make sure that you had that floor general in a great setter?
Yeah, I think you're right, Donny. But I think more importantly, it's important that setter really buys into the team philosophy and really understands what the coach is talking about. You forgot one setter that I would mention,
I was going to forget
and
somebody.
it's going to be Tessa Stranick.
Yeah.
Now, because I can remember Tessa. She wouldn't even look at me when she was on the court. She would just kind of give me a wave with her hand and say, I got it. I know what we're talking about. And I think that gets to what you're talking about, with the setter and the coach being on the same page, so that the setter is understanding kind of what the plan is, what the philosophy of the program is, and they can then lead the team. And when you have student athletes leading student athletes, that's how you build success.
I guess I have to ask you, as we're talking so much volleyball, do you miss it? Do you miss coaching? And if so,
Yeah.
how have you been able to maybe, fill that void?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I miss, Donnie. I definitely miss coaching. I don't miss recruiting. That's that's the lifeblood of being a college coach. You have to love recruiting, and I did while I was there and while I was doing it. I don't miss that. So the advantage that I have right now is I get to work with my daughter's club team. I helped with Mayo High School volleyball a little bit this year. I get to coach and don't have to do any of that. I just get to be on the court, which is the fun part, build the relationships with the kids, teach the skills, and help them achieve their goals. That being said, one of the biggest things that I do miss about St. Mary's, it has less to do with coaching, and it has more to do with what makes St. Mary's the place that it is, and it sounds a little cliche, but, St. Mary's and other places are far less about the buildings. They're far less about the facilities. They're far less about that. And they're far more about the people that are there. And, in my 20 years, at St. Mary's, I had the fortune of working with so many great people. I've already mentioned a few of them, but, St. Mary's has always been known for having coaches that are just passionate about their student athletes, and they care about that experience that the student athletes have. And I do miss that. Back to people like Bill and Greg Moore, who were alums and still passionate about St. Mary's and gave their time, to Eric Lindquist. He was there for such a long time as a swim coach, and every one of Eric's student athletes would say that they had the best experience of their life swimming for Eric at St. Mary's. Nick Whaley, who's still helping out with baseball, was the head coach when I started, all the way down to Nick Winnicky and Jen Miller and Neil Cassidy and all those guys that they're not at St. Mary's because they're making a ton of money, but they're there because they really care about the kids. They care about the school and they care about the program. And that's one of the biggest things that I do miss about St. Mary's. And before I finish talking about coaches, I do have to make sure to mention all of my assistant coaches that I work with. Jackie's done a great job taking over the program. Still having Chris Rohde there to help out. And then back to my first assistant coach, Corey Phelps, who's now head coaching at Minnesota State Mankato. So it's those people, it's you and it's Dean and the faculty that really make St. Mary's the place that it is. And that's the part that I miss.
But you've only had one coach, one assistant, who really was a rocket scientist.
It's a good
And
point.
that's not just a joke. She really was a rocket scientist.
And I still don't understand why she gave up the profession that she had to come sit on the bench with me for 4 years. So.
Mike, I think another thing too, you had mentioned Don Olson a little bit earlier, and we're going to have him as a guest on Cardinals Nest 2.0 coming up, I think about in a week's time, right, Donnie? But, when you started at St. Mary's 19, 20 years ago, Was there someone specifically who was maybe a mentor to you from a coaching standpoint or within the athletic department, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that you always look to Don when you were at St. Mary's. For me, my coaching mentors were the two coaches that I worked with when I was at Graceland. So it was Stu McDowell, who was the head women's coach at Graceland, who I worked with, and then my head coach there, Stu Sherman, and I stay in contact with them all the time. But in terms of St. Mary's and somebody that you always look to at St. Mary's when I first got there for an example of how to positively affect students, it was Tony Piscatello. Tony was so instrumental in so many students, and I know that everybody that comes on that's been there for a long time probably talks about Tony, but you always look to Tony and his passion for St. Mary's and his dedication to students and everything that he did.
Like, I think, one of the things that keeps coming up is a big part of athletics are the relationships that you build, right? And the same is true for student athletes. Well after they've graduated from college, if they were fortunate to play a varsity sport, that's something and life lessons they will take with them forever. Do you still hear back from some of your players and stay in contact with them?
I do, obviously one of our strengths within our program is that we were able to bring in some of the better players, some of the top players from Southeast Minnesota. And so many of those players are still in Southeast Minnesota. So I do see them. I hear from them pretty regularly. Erica Hurley is one that I talk to pretty often. Alex Peterson from Fillmore Central, So I see a lot of those players, and the scary thing is a lot of them now are having kids that are playing volleyball, and so it's a little bit scary that way. I was just talking to somebody whose daughter, who I coached, whose daughter is now in college and going to play volleyball, and I'm like, holy smokes! I have been doing this for a while. So
well, think about it, Mike. You made mention to your daughter's high school hockey team. Well, I was here when she was born, and now she's in high school.
Yeah.
It's
well, I mean, to your point, Donny, my son we're doing college visits now with my son Jackson. He's 17 and playing hockey and baseball and soccer, and my daughter, we're pretty excited to be able to watch her play varsity volleyball as a freshman this last year. So and so she's 15. So when you think about it, I started in 96 and they were born in 2004 and 2005. So
crazy. It is crazy. If you could, Mike, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and I know you don't like to talk about players, but
Sure.
how about like favorite memories that you may have from volleyball? If there were a couple of, maybe there was a match or maybe
Sure.
I mean, I know I have a few, but what would be a couple of your favorite memories from your time here?
Yeah, it's interesting because we always talk to players about when 20 years down the road, you're never going to remember if you won this match or you lost this match and that sort of thing, and that's true for coaches too. I mean, we have our matches that you're like, oh, that was a good one, that was a fun one. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite memories with a particular player, and it had to do with a middle hitter on the 2009 team, Amy Kuyak, who was one of a fantastic middle, and it was a moment that really was a little bit out of volleyball, but it had to do with volleyball. And it was when we were departing for the 2009 NCAA championships down at Washington University in St. Louis. And we were coming up from the locker room and the whole campus was there and the band was there and everybody had music going, and Ann Merklowitz spoke, and it was super exciting. We walked through a long tunnel of people and we got on the bus, and Amy was just sitting there kind of staring at the crowd, staring off into space, and was really quiet. And I said, Amy, what's wrong? And she goes, I'm not this special. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't deserve this. I'm just a volleyball player. So that meant a lot, It's one of those moments that she'll remember forever.
I think that both I was fortunate enough to make both trips to the NCAA with you, and I think that when the one in St. Louis was one of my favorite memories, especially volleyball. Just heartbreaking loss, but got to go on the arch, and do some things as a team, and just to see the team just interact with each other, because I mean every team is a special group, but I just thought that group was one that they really just all kind of fed off of each other. And you know, for as tough as the loss was to end the season, the bus trip home wasn't so bad because you know, it just was just a fun time.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Donnie, if you would have asked me to kind of pick out a match that was a good memory or something like that, I probably wouldn't have picked a win. I probably would have picked that match against University in St. Louis. You know, we played them extremely, extremely well. We had some kids that played just really, really great matches. And Washington University went on to win the national championship. So that would have been you know, one of my most memorable matches. And it wasn't even a win for us. It was just a real good example of, you know, you put your best effort out there in athletics in general. You put your best effort out there, and if you play your best, you can't hang your head. And our kids didn't. Like you said, they lost, they played well, but they were still really proud of what they accomplished that year.
Donnie, I've got to share one of my memories because I have to credit Mike for really helping me out from a volleyball standpoint, because of course I came to St. Mary's with a media background, not a volleyball background, and I did not broadcast much volleyball, any volleyball in my life. And Mike, you had asked me to do the PA for the national tournament when St. Mary's was hosting one year. And I'm like, I don't know the terminology. Like, I'm not sure I can really do this. And you sat right by my side and you pretty much told me exactly what to say. And I just want to thank you publicly for that, because not only did it help me at that tournament, but I think it really gave me a little more confidence going forward from there in broadcasting some volleyball games. So
well, don't give me too much credit, because I really did, I think, just sit there. So
you definitely told me what to say in that.
Well, Mike, let's kind of lighten the mood a little bit.
Sure.
I want you to tell everyone the associate athletic director story from the baseball game.
Do you really want to hear that? Well, I can tell it if you want to.
It's a G-rated show, so I just want you to just, because I think that's just a hysterical story. I mean, it's just a funny.
Yeah. So, you know, back in the day, you know, we as staff, we were event and site managers for different contests and different events, and I happened to be out at the baseball game, you know, just kind of keep an eye on things and make sure everything was going well. And as you all know, baseball gets toward the end of the school year. So we were in close to finals week and that sort of thing. And students were having a pretty good time. And Greg Moore, who was our assistant hockey coach at the time, walked up and chatted with a student who happened to have a brown paper bag, probably full of something that he shouldn't have. And the student kind of refused to get rid of it. So Greg came up and, you know, asked me, he's like, would you be willing to go and talk? And so I went over to the student, and Greg was standing there, and I introduced myself, and I said, you know, I'm Mike Lester, I'm the assistant athletic director. And the student immediately looked at me, put his air quotes up, and said, "Ooh, the assistant." And I was just like, okay. And I said, well, you probably really want to deal with me, because you see that lady over there, that's the athletic director, and you don't want me to go get her. And ultimately he ended up leaving, and it all was fine. But
it just,
that was a pretty good story.
When we talk about funny stories, I'll just never forget that, because it was just, and we talk about that for years afterwards.
Yeah.
Ooh, the assistant.
Yeah.
Well, I had not heard that story before, so that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I know that you know, you work out. If you had to tell us what would be on your playlist.
Oh God.
What would be on your playlist? What would be old man Mike's playlist?
Well, I'm actually pretty proud to say that I've gotten my son listening to the Doc radio station in Rochester, which is classic rock and roll. So I think that's where I would be. It would be, you know, Aerosmith and Clapton and all those kinds of guys. Yeah. So that would probably be who would be on there.
You know, I'm curious.
I'm not a country guy like Coach Whaley would be, but
Mike, you brought up your son, and I'm curious. You know, sometimes when we had you on our original Cardinals Nest when you were a coach here, we'd kind of ask you advice that you might have for high school students and things like that. Well, now you're going through it as a parent, but of course you're director of athletics as well, a former head volleyball coach. So now what advice are you giving your son, or what advice would you give other high school students who are kind of in that college search, deciding, can I play athletics? Do I want to do something sports related? What advice are you giving?
You're right, Dean. It is interesting being kind of on the other side of the ropes, as you say, when you're talking with your own kids going to school. But some of the things still have remained the same. You would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be, at the number of students and parents who just simply aren't informed. In all different areas, whether it's financial aid or academic requirements and that sort of thing. So just making sure that you're informed on what a school has to offer. I think that so many people still look at schools purely from the price tag. And if you're not informed, that can really sway you away from a lot of schools. But things that I told recruits when they first started looking at schools are the same things that I've told my son. You have to look at a school for academics first. You have to look at how far away you want to be from school. And once you've decided how far away you want to be, draw a circle around your house and figure out all the schools that are either within that circle or outside that circle if you're wanting to get further away. Decide on what size of school you want, and then look at all the different schools that are of that size. Right now with my son, we're looking at a really wide variety of schools, second semester, junior year, looking at small public schools, small private schools, large public schools, so he can get an idea. And then once you have that, now you can really focus down on specific schools. So if you've decided that you really want to be within 2 hours from home and you want to go to a small private college, guess what? Now you've got about 8 or 10 schools to look at. Where otherwise you're trying to narrow it down from thousands and thousands of schools, and that becomes really, really overwhelming for kids. So, that's what we tell our kids. That's what I've told recruits from when I very first started. So some of that hasn't changed. You can find more information online now, but the process is still the same.
Donnie, we've got about a minute left. So if you got one final question.
I could talk to Mike for days, I think, but I think it's just important to to have you on and just to talk to you again and see how things are going. And it's Thursday lunch isn't the same, without you.
I heard it's kind of stopped. Are we even doing it anymore?
It has stopped. But Mike was one of the founding fathers in Thursday lunch, and we used to just, as a staff, we used to go out to lunch on Thursdays, and Mike was one of the founding fathers in that. And when he left, it kind of peter out a little bit. So anytime you want to get back to Winona,
right,
on Thursday, we'll make sure to go to lunch.
That sounds perfect. I have to give credit to John Cheetah and Larry Lutmers for really getting the Thursday lunch going. But I tried to get back earlier this fall for the St. Mary's volleyball scrimmage. I signed up on Sign Up Genius and everything, and then was told that Sign Up Genius was only supposed to be open to on-campus people. So I had to withdraw my name.
Well, we'll get you back sometime.
All right, that sounds good. And maybe on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's some noon ball games going on. I don't know about that.
There you go. That sounds good.
All right, Mike Lester, our former volleyball coach, assistant athletic director here at St. Mary's, and now director of athletics and student life at Rochester Community and Technical College. Thanks for being on the show, Mike.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and thanks for watching Cardinals Nest 2.0.